was the last time you built an app or flow to make your life easier? Me? Well, I'm super lazy, so I do it all the time. Why? Because I think they're great ways to automate your business. So today I'm going to show you 6 examples of Power Apps and examples of Power Automates that I created just to make things go easier at my company, PowerApps 911. So we're going to talk about our applicant tracking process, my weekly meeting tool for me sending out invites, how we automate incoming help requests, our self-service meeting invites, our CRM system, that is a very robust system we're going to go through and you'll love that one. And the final one is one that's the most helpful, but probably a little bit obvious, but we'll get to that one at the end. Sound like fun? Then let's switch over to my desktop and take a look. All right, so first up, our applicant tracking system. So for a company of 30 people, we get lots, like hundreds, maybe almost 1,000 different applicants a year. It's a little crazy. And so we try to get a good look at all of those as they come through. So the way people come in, right, they come here to our little careers page, they say apply here. And then what this does is takes them to a Microsoft Forms, right? Good reminder that we use Microsoft Forms in conjunction with Power Apps and Power Automate quite a bit. And so here, they kind of run through, they fill this little puppy out and, they answer all these questions about where they live, why they want to work here, what they're looking for, and they rate their skills. They give us some different things like their LinkedIn URL and, they do all this and they hit submit. Okay. So that's the way it comes in. So what we're going to do when that comes in is that's going to trigger a Power Automate flow for us. And so here's our lovely new hire flow. So when a flow gets submitted, or when a form, not a flow, when a form gets submitted, we're going to grab the information. We're going to check one of the questions, right? Because sometimes we have some higher level filters we're looking for. And so as long as you make it through the filter, then we're going to go and create the item in our SharePoint list, right? So this is just a standard. We hit a SharePoint list and we fill in all of the information. So every one of their answers we're taking and putting into a SharePoint list because we want to manage it out of SharePoint for the most part, right? So we create it in there. Once it gets created in SharePoint, then this is the latest piece that we've added. So if you've seen this one before, you didn't know this part. And so now what we do is we know that in our first pass, right? Remember, we get so many of these, but in our first pass, we're only looking at a couple of key questions, right? To kind of decide, do I want to go read this one further? And so what we're doing is we're showing their answer to some of those key questions, both questions and the ratings on skills. And what we're doing is we're getting back a link to the applicant or application itself, so the SharePoint link, and then their LinkedIn request, right? Like that way, in one little Teams post here, we have basically everything that we need to manage this person. And so then when someone reviews it, they're going to go and just comment in that Teams thread and say, hey, I'm ready for this person to, go to the next step. Or, this person doesn't meet what we're looking for right now. Like, someone, tell them we're sorry, they don't meet the requirements, right? It gives us a way to think through that stuff. But now we've kind of got this all in a lovely little Teams chat. Not complicated, nothing fancy, but it really works to help us facilitate those conversations when we're reviewing lots of these, right? Because now we have a place to talk about each person. And as they go through the process, right, there's lots of different steps. It's just all kind of being handled in the Teams comment. Now, it's also, I don't want you to think it's just about Teams. Really, then if you go back to the SharePoint item, we have, when you click on that, if you go to a specific applicant's request, then what you're going to see in that SharePoint item is we use a custom PowerApps form to break it into the sections we want. And we've added some different facilities. Like for example, if we're going to pass on a applicant, then when you change it to, no, then there's a little button that pops up. You hit the button to say no, and then it gives you a spot to fill in the information that you want to pass on to them, based on the thing, right? So that way you can kind of do it all there. So we're taking a form, we're running it through a flow, and then we are going to use a Teams message to facilitate all of the conversations. And we're using SharePoint as our database to track all that. Down here at the end as well, you'll see my flow. There's a send email notification. Remember when you see the red dotted lines like that? That is telling you that this only runs if that fails. So if for some reason my process fails, which I don't remember the last time this one failed, but if it did, I would just get an email saying, hey, the hiring flow failed, so I could go figure out what's wrong with it and make sure I manually move that person through the process if necessary. I will also point out, like looking at the flow, so there are a couple other steps that are going to come, like after we get through this round of hiring, we're going to adjust it a little bit. And so one of the things I'd like this flow to do is to send an email back to the applicant, kind of tell them what to expect when they apply. So we're going to add that in here. And we're going to, our current SharePoint database has gotten so, it's had so many iterations that it's probably time to reboot it. So we're probably gonna get a new SharePoint list that tracks maybe just 1 or 2 statuses instead of today there's like 45 statuses that are confusing. So there you go. So there's the first one that we use to run our business. So the second one is one that I built to make my weekly jobs easier, right? So part of our Power Platform training is we have our university program, like a 6-month-long program where almost every week, me and the students in university, we have a live 1-hour class that we teach different topics, right? There's no set schedule. Like we have some topics we always cover. We kind of ad hoc topics. It's very dynamic, right? It's always the same times roughly, but it's always very dynamic. So then that means that every week I kind of need to send them a update on, hey, well, here's what we're going to cover this week. And B, here is the Teams meeting link to it, right? Because every class has its own meeting as well. And so I built a Power App to do that. So here I come in, I fill out just quickly, like, what is this class going to be on? What are we doing this week, right? A little text here. Like right now we had a kind of a weird holiday schedule. So I've got the holiday schedule in here. So they kind of, they've been getting that one for about beginning of November. So they kind of knew all the different movements we were going to have around the holidays. I can put our mentors in here, like all of this. But the idea is it takes me literally about 30 seconds each week to come in here and be like, hey, next week we're covering blah, 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 boom, boom, boom. And then I hit send. And one of the real big advantages of this one for me is that, as you imagine, our university, like the students are in there changing every week. It's different people, right? We have people rotating in, rotating out. But so with that, then what I did was I wrote a Power Automate flow. So let's click on that real quick. And so this flow is actually going to go and work against the API. So all of our training stuff is hosted out of a third-party website called Thinkific. And so they have an API that we authenticate with, and I get the list of current students like right then. So then that way I don't have to go manually download or maintain a list of students. I am just right here in this step here. We're going to hit their HTTP, their API endpoint, pull that in, parse out all the extra people. So there's a bunch of people in there that are PowerApps 911. I don't want them to get the meeting invites. And so we get the list of, the current students, and then we create a Teams meeting. And we send that, with the subject, right? And then the body and the start and the end times. Remember, all that was configurable over in the Power Apps. We're always able to send those updates. And then we loop through, we put all those people in. And then finally, we update the attendees based on using the API endpoint. So I can add all the attendees. I can hide the attendees. So that way I'm not emailing everyone. If someone says reply all, it just goes to me. It doesn't go to the other 50 students. And then I also do response requested false, so that way I don't get all their yes, I'm coming replies, right, when you hit response. So this is a super simple flow, right? Like we just make one HTTP call, grab the list, and then send them all the meeting invites. But I can tell you that it has greatly increased the student satisfaction because now they get a meeting invite every week that is accurate instead of like this generic, calendar placeholders. So they're getting the real meeting invite on their calendar every week, which means more of them come because it's on their calendar, right? I only go to meetings on my calendar. It's okay. But the other thing is like every week I have to send that thing out, and I used to do it by hand, and it would take me, half an hour by the time I got the list downloaded, put them in there, wrote out the text. As you saw, like I opened this app up, all of what I wrote last time is saved here. Everything's configured. This date, look, I wrote this crazy formula so it always defaults to Thursdays because 99% of the time class is Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So it defaults the time to 3. And then based on whatever day I come in here, it always finds the upcoming Thursday. Yeah, pretty cool formula there. And bingo, bango. So if you find yourself always trying to schedule stuff or you're having to interact with APIs, you have to go download a CSV file and load it. Like, is there a way to programmatically pull that in and make your life easier? So that's 2. So the third app, we're going to go back and we're going to talk about our dear friend Flow for the most part again. Okay. So the third one here, the way that 90% of our customers, I don't know, I'm just making up, a lot of our customers come to us. They go down here to the bottom of our homepage and they fill out our contact form, right? They say, well, hey, what am I interested in? It could be, project help, training, our COE toolkit. There's even an option here for free help. Imagine we get a lot of free help requests as well, right? But people fill this thing out multiple times every day. It's a very busy system, right? We get, I don't even know, thousands of these a year. Once again, we're only a company of like 30-ish people, so it's a lot. So what happens is when they filled this out, we needed a way to facilitate making sure that all those people got their responses. So what we did was we wrote a flow to do that. Let's go over there. All right, so this might be the world's biggest, most complicated flow that I know of. But basically, when that form gets filled out, it gets triggered. And if you're saying, Shane, why don't you use a Microsoft form there? Great question. The reason I can't make the Microsoft form look nice, like if you noticed over here, this form integrates nicely. If you put a Microsoft form here, it doesn't look as pretty. So we switched to Cognito forms to make it look a little prettier. So then we kick off parallel branches. So there's two branches. The first one over here on the left, what we do is we grab the email the person just responded or just filled out the form, and we send them back something called an email with options. This says, hey, someone's going to follow up with you real soon. Yay. In the meantime, would you like to join our mailing list? And there's just a yes or no button. Email with options do that. And if they click on yes, then you're going to see right here, we just go through the process and we add them via a HTTP call to our mail system, right? So if people self-elect, I love to tell a story of when I first wrote the first version of this many years ago, we had 7 people on our mailing list. We now have thousands, like more than, I don't even, 10, 12,000. I don't even know. And all because we politely asked, do you want to add, right? Look, if they say no, we don't do nothing. We don't flag them as bad people or, complain, right? We don't put them on our mailing list. We just don't do anything, okay? So that's one half of this contact flow is just basically politely asking, can we add you? The other half, though, is probably what's more interesting. So over here, we got to respond to these people, right? And so I'm going to give you the quick overview of how this runs. In a couple of our different training classes, we have the complete breakdown of step-by-step how this thing works, but we would be here all day if I try to do that right now. So basically what we're going to do with this one is we're going to figure out whose day is it to respond to requests, right? So if today is Steven's day, so we're getting that out of a SharePoint list where we track day and person. We're then going to log into our SharePoint list that we've done that. Remember, we're using SharePoint as a database. Again, don't worry, we're going to talk about Dataverse as a database too, but for these solutions, they're both SharePoint driven. So we're going to log in our SharePoint system. And then when we go down here, we're basically based on which service they chose. So for example, if they chose that free help, right? Imagine pretty popular. Then what happens is we send a request over to the person who is in charge that day, right? We just said Steven. So we're going to send Steven a Teams message using adaptive cards. It's going to say, hey, Steven, Susie sent in a request for this. This is what she's looking for. And right there in Teams, Steven can just reply in the adaptive card. Oh, Susie, here's the answer to your question, or here's the link that you need, or here's, whatever information he wants to pass to Susie. He does it right in Teams, hits reply. We update our SharePoint list. And then assuming that he said, send that back to the customer, then nope, not that one. One of these cases, there you go. Then we turn around and we send that email back to Susie. So, the conversation came in from a form. Steven does all of his work inside of Teams. And when he replies, it goes back to her via email, right? We're not on Teams chat, someone, hitting us up on the website, right? So, and then the process kind of repeats if Susie responds back to that. So there's a lot more, there's error handling in here. There's cases for spam, for people who, just want a phone call right away type of stuff. Like there's a lot of that stuff, a lot of really cool pieces in here, a lot of error troubleshooting type of stuff as well, but we're not gonna get into all that. So just know that if you have some type of system where you're coming in, whether it's emails or contact forms or something like that, like we turned it into an automated solution and we got it out of email because my consultants don't want to work in email, and we got it into Teams. So another great solution for us. All right, so the fourth one, a little bit more straightforward, but very applicable, very handy for us. So over here, if we go to our training site, right, almost all of our paid training options include office hours. It's a monthly thing, right? We have it actually this Thursday, where I get on, I host 2 one-hour live sessions. People submit all their questions, and we just problem solve for all the different training students, right? Like I just get pages and pages of questions, and we just pound through those with the students. And so every month, though, they need to kind of go self-sign into those. So what they do is they jump into their My Dashboard. They find the lovely office hours little logo here. And then what they're going to do is they're going to say, get an invite for office hours. So they're going to come here, and all they're going to do is put in their email address and then choose if they want the AM session or the PM session. They can do both, but they have to do like one at a time. And so what that's going to do is it's going to take their email address, and this is an HTML form. So this is not PowerApps. This is not forms itself. This is literally just HTML that me and ChatGPT wrote one day. And when they click this AM button, it is going to hit a flow. And here's that flow. So that flow is manually triggered by someone hitting this API and passing in their email string, right? So they pass it in. We're going to grab all of the stuff that they've passed in. And then basically what we're going to do in here is if they chose AM, right? This is a PM column, but if I choose AM, we're going to get the event. So that is the actual Teams meeting. We're going to pull it in and we're going to loop through and grab all the people that have currently been added as optional attendees. We're going to add the person that just put their name in there. And then we're going to use that whole send HTTP request again. And we're going to hide attendees as true and response required. So what this does is this lets them add themselves to that Teams meeting. But because it's all hidden thanks to the API, they'll just get a response back, like or a meeting invite back, addressed just to them. They're on the optional recipients. They can't see anyone else other than my email address. But now they can add it to their calendar with the Teams link, right? This is so much better than me. I hate when people send me those little ICS files, right? Like I have to click on it and figure out how to merge that in. Like, not a fan. So I spent a lot of time researching how to make it so these people could, get these meeting invites themselves. And if you've never seen this one before, I'll put a link up there to the video that kind of walks you through this one. But people do not use this manually triggered flow enough, right? Like we can trigger this with buttons on a website, in an email. Like there's all these different ways. Even my little fancy Stream Deck, right? That little plastic thing, right? It can trigger these. I have a bunch of different ways to run automations that you're not thinking about because you don't think about that you can trigger it by hitting a URL like that. Okay, so that's number 4. Super simple, but once again, like makes everyone's life better because I sat down and figured this thing out. All right, number 5. This is probably the one that you'll find the most exciting, but this is our full-on CRM system. It's also gonna be a pain because I'm gonna have to bore out a lot, right? But let's switch over and look at that. Okay, so our CRM system is built on top of Dataverse. And we built the whole thing by hand, right? We got a bunch of smart PowerApps people around here, so it kind of made sense. And it is primarily a model-driven app. We've been through different versions. It originally was a Canvas app on SharePoint, then it became a Canvas app on SQL, then it became a Canvas app on Dataverse. And it's been through lots of iterations, but this one is really finally the first one I would show you because this one feels pretty professional and polished. So we took our model-driven app, we've made it, embedded it into Teams, right? Once again, I told you my consultants like Teams, so our CRM system is here. And so what I want to do is kind of give you a high level run through of what we've built and talk to you about the coolest thing is where we integrate it with QuickBooks. Okay. So we've got a way to manage the employees, the different teams, right? So of our group of 30, we're kind of broken into different teams. And we do that because each manager needs to be able to manage and see their own team. So we kind of have to facilitate that through here. Team assignments, right? Where we kind of manage as we move people between teams. And so then this one is billable targets. So this is where we track, right? All of our different consultants have different number of billable hours that they are trying to get to, right? Each week, not trying to, they always get to, they're awesome. Right, but instead of like the typical, you just must work 40, right? Our consultants are anywhere from 25 hours a week billable to 5 hours a week billable, just kind of depending. And so we wanted a way to control that and track that in here because the thing that I won't show you, but we also use, we have a Power BI dashboard and report system that we use to kind of see where you are versus target and that type of stuff. And so we needed a place to, keep your targets. So that is in here as well. So then accounts, this is all of our different customers. And so here we're keeping things like, the customer name, the total amount of hours we've billed, right? So we kind of know the scale of each customer. We have a primary contact for most customers and their primary email. We also then keep track of things like, do we have an MSA, Master Services Agreement for this customer or not? And an NDA with that customer or not, right? And all of these are, so we kind of can quickly find this information, especially when people are jumping between projects and they want to get up to speed on a customer very quickly. So here, let's click in. If we click on one of these customers, right? So we're going to click on PowerApps 911, right? Us. So then here you're going to see that, we're tracking things like what are the different projects associated with that customer, any of the information that we have, there's our contact info. Do we have any current opportunities with them, right? We'll show you the sales pipeline here in a second. The timesheet. So all the different timesheet entries that have been tied to this particular customer. So that once again, right, the idea is it's a CRM. We should be able to go and look here and get a holistic look at what's going on, all the different projects they might have going on and the current statuses. Details. So if we have any of this additional information about like, contact info, industry stuff, billing info, shipping info, all of that is in here as well. Didn't find it somewhere in the mess as well. Or not in the mess, but somewhere else in there. Maybe it's at a different spot, but we also have a place like we have a SharePoint document library where we track all of their contracts and files. And so there's a link to that. I missed it somewhere through there. That's our customers. And then under contacts, this is where we track all the individual contacts, right, that are associated with the customers. That's probably not earth shattering, but we won't bother drilling in any of those. Like it's just all the information you normally expect. Okay. Right. That's pretty normal. Next up, we have got the projects. So this is where we track all the different projects, right? So we have a customer. Some customers just have one project. Some customers have a dozen projects. So we need a way to track the project. And out there to the right, like we've got things like, how many hours they have left, who's the PM, who's the primary consultant, secondary consultant. So a way for you to connect the dots again very quickly if you need to. So that's all of our projects. So project statuses, this is tied to projects, obviously, right? But the idea here is that for a lot of our ongoing projects, we want the ability to contact or update our customer weekly. So consultants come into project statuses, they add all their notes for the week, and that all gets packaged up and reviewed by the PM and then sent off to the customer. So we kind of built a system for facilitating those weekly touch points with our customer. Timesheets, right? They're not fun, but everyone has to do them. And so the timesheets, this is where we can come in and when we add, our time, right? Hey, I did this for the customer. We have a place for the line item information to go to the customer. If we need any notes about that activity that goes back to our client, to our PMs, we can do that. We also have some different checkboxes there. Maybe it's unbillable time for some reason, or, we have some different, status type of stuff there. But basically our entire timesheet, time entry system is now a giant Dataverse app. This is also probably one of the coolest parts of this. So we use QuickBooks Online as our accounting billing system, right? So we got a timesheet over here. We got our accounting billing system over here. We got to marry the two up. Not gonna lie, for the first few years, someone just manually took our timesheet entries back when they're in SharePoint and stuff, right? And would have to go and type them into QuickBooks. So we would then have that information to put on invoices and bill customers, right? Run the business. Yeah. So what we've built now, so now when you go in here to time entry, when I first added, it just kind of goes into a pending state. So then there's someone, whether it's my manager, the PM, but there's someone that comes back through and needs to approve my time. But when they approve my time, what happens is we wrote a Dataverse plugin in C#, right? We got some smart people that know C#, it ain't me. But they wrote a Dataverse plugin that says, hey, okay, that status changed. Like that does some data validation, make sure that the amount of hours and all that makes sense. It then fetches, all right, here's all the information I need around, okay, what customers it for, what projects for, what consultants it for, gets all that information bundled together, and then it hits the API for QuickBooks Online and it writes that into QuickBooks. Like, it saves us, 10 plus hours a week of manual data entry. It is fully robust, right? Because we did a Dataverse plugin, it happens super duper fast. And like it has all the error checking and everything built into it. But that was a big win for us when we got our time entries to go that way. And it's robust enough, like if someone edits a time entry or it's approved and then it gets modified, through the proper process, it can make edits to existing ones as well. So it's not just a one-way information, it's both. And so that one is probably the most awesome part of this whole CRM for us, was this ability to integrate directly with QuickBooks Online. In this case, we used a Dataverse plugin, though we've done other stuff with custom connectors and stuff because we have different things we got to pull in. But that one, super cool. Couple more things here. The last piece here, we've got leads. So now we track all of the leads that our salespeople are working through the system here. Like nothing special, just the normal type of, we get a contact, we got to put the lead in here. And so we're going to track all of our lead information. And then opportunities. So, leads are kind of the people that are potentially looking for stuff, right? And then opportunities are obviously the project, the thing that they want built. But this just gives us more insight into what our current sales pipeline looks like and all of those fun things. So there you go. That is a very awesome CRM system. We built it all by hand. Many versions, but this one is finally actually built. Model-driven app, Dataverse solution, Dataverse plugins. We have a prod and a dev and a test environment like we're supposed to. Finally, this is a pretty robust one. So A little bit more complicated than the other ones we talked about, but I love this one. And I'd love to do a full video on it, maybe one day. All right, so number 6 is if you go over here to create, and it's called a blank app, right? And you hit create, you type in some garbage, and you say create. Why am I showing you this as the 6th one? Because this is the one that drives me the craziest, right? Too often we have hard, weird, complex things that are happening, and like we got this big giant app and someone's like, oh, this one button's not working and I can't figure out how to solve the problem. And they're trying to fix it in the context of this giant app. And when they, modify it or change a variable, like it's breaking 7 other screens, right? The best way that you can troubleshoot and fix your apps the most efficiently is you jump over here to a blank app, you build the bare minimum pieces to recreate the problem, and then you figure out, hey, does this problem, is it something with my code? Is it a bug in PowerApps? Is it just a terrible idea? But now that I've got it all encapsulated in a small little app or Power Automate Cloudflow, I've got a much better chance of solving it. This is the number one thing I remind people all the time. You've got to learn to fail fast. Failing fast is jumping over here and doing this, because sometimes the problem is might be, some moving weirdness that you're trying to incorporate, but it might be something you're doing on another screen that you don't realize breaking it. By coming over here and solving the problem in a contained little controlled thing, you can troubleshoot. Does my code work? Or is it a PowerApps bug? Or, if it works here and it doesn't work over there, then there's probably some other dependency over there that you're not thinking about. And now you can kind of unpack it. At least once a week, this is the type of thing that I have to remind someone, right? So I'm just trying to remind all of you that the best app that you can use for yourself is a blank one, and do the problem in the smallest little box possible, okay? So I'll get off my soapbox, but I know that feels like a cheating one, but I really wish you all would listen to this, okay? All right, that was a lot. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you enjoyed this overview of ways that I use PowerApps. We use them here at the company, for my personal gain, for the team's work, or for making things better for our customers. But there's a lot of these cool little solutions that a lot of us don't think of, right? It's the whole cobbler's kids don't have shoes. You guys don't build enough apps and flows for yourself. The other great thing about it is, you go and do that. It's a lot easier to go get lost or go double dive in. Like that whole thing around sending those email or those meeting invites without the people seeing everyone else's, that was something that just nagged at me for a long time. So I kept poking and poking and poking. I finally figured it out, and I've used it in 20 other apps at this point because I solved this weird problem that no one was ever going to have me just solve, or no one even thought was possible, but because I went on a personal vendetta to solve it, I got it. So do that. All right, so questions, comments, leave them below. Tell me what you want to see. Did you enjoy this? Do you have other ideas, other things you want to see? Is one of those apps you want to see me go super deep in? Well, a few of them already have videos, so I'll just point you to that video, but in the ones that don't, I'm open for it. All right, with that, I'm going to say thanks and have a great day.